That's what I said.
Yeah.
We're live.
Yeah, perfect.
Uh,
Am I live yet?
Yes.
We are live. So welcome everybody to the House Committee on General and Housing. It is still Thursday, January 23rd. And we are now hearing from a panel of people involved in labor, the first of which is David Mickenberg. Why don't we have the committee introduce themselves to David?
Emily Krasnow, Chittenden 9 South Burlington.
Claudia Lamont, of the Memorial Washington District.
Good morning, I'm Elizabeth Burrows and I represent Windsor One, Heartland, West Windsor.
Mary Howard, and I represent Rutland District 6. Gail Pezzo, and I represent Chittenden 20 Colchester.
Nice to meet you.
Me too.
Debbie Dolgan, I represent St. Johnsbury, Concord and Kirby.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, Tom Charlton, Athens, Grafton, Chester, and Wyndham.
Joe Parsons, Orange, Caledonia.
Eleanor Dodge, Essex Town and City of Essex Junction.
I do know Ashley Bartley, Fairfax, Georgia.
David, I'm Mark Mahaly. I represent Callis, Plainfield and Marshfield. Welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us your name for the record and take it away.
Thank you. David Mickenberg and it's no longer law firm. The law firm of Mickenberg, Dunn and Smith that has been around since 1982 has ended. I'm looking for my own firm called Mickenberg, just Mickenberg. So, but we have been for the last 40-something years working on labor issues in the state of Vermont. And in the last 15 years, I've been working actively on labor issues in the State House. Most of that time working on behalf of Working Vermont, which is the leading coalition of public and private sector unions in the state. Working Vermont is made up of AFT Vermont, who represents nurses, teachers, and others. Vermont NEA, representing educators, we'll have more from the Vermont State Employees Association, VSEA, representing state employees and educators in the state colleges, the Vermont Troopers Association, the Professional Firefighters of Vermont, and the Vermont AFL-CIO, which is an umbrella organization that represents a variety of unions. And I think we calculated roughly that we're now at a point, if you add up as many union members as there are in the state of Vermont, about 1 in 5 Vermonters live in a union household or somebody that's in a union. So quite a large number of Vermonters. So Working Vermont's agenda sort of came about as to focus on 3 things. One is to help strengthen organized labor in Vermont, the labor unions that I mentioned and others. We work for policies to help strengthen organized labor. 2 is to promote policies that benefit working Vermonters generally. So not just unionized working Vermonters, but Vermonters every day who may or may not be in a union, and how the policies that you work on here impact them. And then to promote broad policies that support the efforts of you all to bring about change that addresses the concerns of working people. Myself, I've worked as an attorney for many years. I've represented labor unions at the bargaining table. I've represented nonprofits. I've also worked for many years, no longer do, work as an attorney representing injured workers in workers' comp cases. So variety of activities. And during the time that I've worked here, Working Vermont, we worked on a variety of legislative campaigns to improve the lives of working Vermonters. I just want to make sort of one commentary on this, or the current state, but also historically, that advocating for working people has historically not been a partisan issue. And we see that increasingly both here in Vermont and throughout the country, that the issues that impact working people, whether they're unionized or not, are being addressed by political leaders of all different parties. And I think we work hard to find those issues. We were heartened that last year we worked in this committee, for those that were here, and in the Senate and on the floor of the House, to pass PR3, Proposition 3, which was a constitutional amendment in Vermont that would codify the right to organize state of Vermont. We have that right. This would make it a value in our Constitution. And we were really happy that in the Senate, that proposition passed 28-0. And in the House, it was a tripartisan support with 127-8. And we look forward to talking in this committee more about that proposition this year and working with folks to get that in front of the voters. Some of the other areas that we at Working Vermont have worked on historically is around passing legislation to provide paid sick days. We worked in coalition with others on that to enhance our minimum wage laws. We've worked for years on the issue of prevailing wage. I don't know if folks are familiar with what that is, but the prevailing wage, it started back in the early 20th century, a bipartisan members of Congress under the Davis-Bacon. There were two senators, one Republican, one Democrat, said that in public contracts for construction, there should be a sort of a minimum standards that people have. And that's been a law that's been in place federally for many years. Vermont adopted a prevailing wage statute in our state under the leadership of former Senator Vince Luzzi. He was the chair of the Senate Institutions Committee. I believe that was in 1996, and we've been working on that in a cooperative way since then. But that law sets standard for Vermont contracting, where there's Vermont construction projects. What's the sort of minimum standards that people should be paid under a contract for building for the state of Vermont? We've worked there a few years ago. There was an effort to consolidate the Department of Labor and the Agency of Commerce. We worked to try to stop that because we felt really strongly that there should be a distinct voice in state government that addresses issues concerning working people and their employers. So that's one of the issues that we worked on. A big issue some time ago, and it comes up all the time still, is the issue around worker misclassification. So the idea that somebody is made to be an independent contractor to avoid some sort of benefits and protections that would flow to that employee. Sometimes it's appropriate for them to be an independent contractor, and there's a path for that in law. But sometimes people are erroneously or improperly misclassified as independent contractors when they should in fact be an employee. And employee status, as you'll hear through the course of this session, gives you a lot of rights, gives you the ability to not be discriminated against in various ways. It gives you the rights to minimum wage and other benefits. So it's an important issue that for years we've worked on to try to address in this state. We've worked.
Question here.
Yeah, I got a quick question.
Yeah, of course.
Is worker misclassification with regards to independent contractors, is that a nationwide issue?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And do a lot of states have laws that prevent that, or laws that mitigate that, I suppose?
Some do, some don't. We worked hard to pass legislation a few years ago that would give enhanced powers to the Attorney General's office to investigate worker misclassification issues. So that was sort of Vermont's effort to address that issue. And I think generally I think the issue remains. It's big in the construction industry and other sectors of the economy, but I think the work that we've done has helped to stop it, or at least minimize the impact of it. We're going to be working on a bill this year, hopefully around in the construction space, which is requires certified payrolls be submitted to a awarding entity. So if you're working on a state contract for in construction, you would submit your payroll, something that's commonly done in New York and Massachusetts and other places, so that we can verify that the worker is the category that they should be and they're designated as an employee as opposed to being misclassified. So
Thank you.
one of the other areas that we work on in Working Vermont is around unemployment insurance and workers' compensation. So our workers' compensation statute is 100+ years old, and we're constantly looking at the statute to see how it can work better for everyone. It's sort of known as the sort of grand bargain where 100+ years ago, workers gave up the right to sue their employers. Probably a good thing. It's hard to have that litigation going on in exchange for a no-fault system where if you're injured on the job, you're entitled to workers' compensation. And workers' compensation, I don't know how familiar people are with workers' comp, but it provides for wage replacement and medical benefits to treat those injuries, as well as vocational rehabilitation. So we're constantly looking at that law to make sure that it's fair, that it operates well, that employees who are injured are able to access the benefits in a timely way. Unemployment insurance also, it's been a big one over the years that we at Working Vermont have worked on to make sure that that unemployment benefits, again, are administered quickly and fairly. We have worked over the years with the administration and the Department of Labor. I just saw the commissioner a moment ago to try to make sure that that system is operating. They're in the process, just so you know, in a process of redoing their technology, which is a major overhaul to make sure that the UI system operates well. I'll just mention last year we worked on a bill around workers' compensation to enhance the dependent benefits. So right now, for decades, when somebody was out on workers' comp, they got an extra $10 a week for a dependent. So for a child, that $10 had been in place for 30+ years, maybe 40 years. So last year, the legislature worked to double that to $20 a week to help working families when they're out on an injury to no fault of their own. So that's the type of work we do around that. And then last year in this committee, we worked on a labor organizing bill. Well, back a couple of years previously, there was a decision that came down from the Supreme Court, which made it much more difficult for the U.S. Supreme Court, and made it much more difficult for labor unions to organize. And so this body worked to provide opportunities in response to that decision for labor unions and their representatives to speak to prospective employees and to have a system which moves quicker and more efficiently in terms of organizing and more fairly. So last year we built upon that momentum, and in this room and in this body passed, I think, overwhelmingly a bill that did a couple of things. It enhanced organizing of different sectors of our economy, banned captive audience meetings. For those that weren't here last year, captive audience meetings are meetings that employers can require people attend. And all we said is you can still have the meeting, you just can't threaten or fire somebody for not attending the meeting.
These are meetings that are not about the work, they're about religion or
Political
politics.
matters, exactly.
This is the car check bill, right?
And this, yes, and then we also provided for to formulate a union the ability to do card check, which is something that we've worked on for many years. So this year, I think we want to continue to address some of these issues around unemployment insurance and workers' comp. We certainly want to work on passing hopefully PR3, which is the constitutional amendment. I mean, it's really your role is to send it to the voters. Ultimately, the voters will decide whether they want that or not. But we look forward to working on that. And then there'll be a variety, and you'll hear from Jeff and others, a variety of other labor union issues that will surface. And we're always looking to partner with legislators on ideas that you have. So if there's anything that you see in your lives or issues that, you know, there was a legislator I was talking to the other day around reliable contracting, not contracting, reliable scheduling. This has been an issue for many people. So for instance, in the retail sector, being able to say, okay, well, I have to come to work on Friday. So it can't be that Friday morning I get a notice that I'm not going to be called in. Or if I am, there has to be some level of compensation. So that's been an issue that's been frustrating for a lot of working folks, particularly in the retail sector. So those types of ideas have been surfacing, and we look forward to working with anyone who has ideas like that.
Thank you. For the committee, so it's my understanding that it's about 43,000 members. And can you talk about the growth or decline of union strength right now a bit for
Yeah.
everyone and today's climate?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing the support for unions at sort of in public polling at an all-time high. We even saw in the recent presidential election, President Trump's selection for Secretary of Labor was somebody who labor supported, who has been a supporter of labor over time. We've seen labor unions, you know, in that presidential election fall on both sides of the divide in terms of parties. So I think, and in Vermont, we're seeing sort of historic gains in organizing in a variety of sectors, whether it's in healthcare or education or other places. So we are seeing both the public strongly support. We're also seeing places where, you know, in the past, it's always been not always, but oftentimes it could be elections for unions can be contentious. Now we're seeing some employers voluntarily recognizing unions, being openly neutral, so they're not fighting the unionization effort. We often talk about the benefits to businesses and to the workplace for having a partner in creating something that's successful. So it's one thing to have to manage every individual employee and their particular issues, but if you have a union and a structure, a contract which says, okay, well, you know, I understand this is your issue, but here's what the contract says. I think oftentimes employers are seeing that it can be beneficial to the productivity in the workplace and your partners in creating something that's successful. So.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Been very interesting. Any questions by the committee?
Just one, how is prevailing wage set in Vermont? What benchmark do we use?
There's
I know there's a variety of.
Yep. Currently, Vermont sets a standard based on Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's a statewide survey. Other places do it differently, like some connected to what the Davis-Bacon rate is, which is the federal rate. So all federal projects are covered under money that comes from the feds under Davis-Bacon, but it's under, they call it the Vermont Prevailing Wage Survey. The Department of Labor has a whole page on it. It's very interesting. So it's a base wage and then 42% added onto it to account for benefits for years. Since 1996, and then until maybe, I don't know what it was, 7 or 8 years ago, it was just a wage not accounting for any benefits. So we worked collaboratively with the AGC at the time and the administration to come up with a formula that said it would be the wage plus 42.5%. The 42.5% is sort of made up. It's like I think it was on a napkin in the cafeteria with the agency. I think I wanted this and they wanted that. So we said 42.5%. So
But,
The houses are where the deals are made.
yeah. So now that issue, prevailing wage, sometimes it's in this committee, sometimes it's in the institutions committee. Since
It
it's-
impacts the housing and some of the things that we help fund.
Yeah, it could. Yep, it absolutely could. It depends on whether the funds for housing is coming from the federal government, whether it's coming from the capital bill. If it comes from the capital bill, that's when, and the threshold is 200, that project's $200,000 or more funded by the state capital bill.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Our next witness is Wei Wei Wang. And Wei Wei, are you on? Yes, there you are. Thank you.
Morning.
Can you see us?
I can, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
I think we'll have the committee introduce itself to you very quickly.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Well, it's great to see you, Emily Pratt. Hi, Emily Pratt's now Chittenden 9.
Good morning, Sadia Lamont, Illinois Washington District.
Hey, I'm Elizabeth Burrows and I represent Windsor 1.
Good morning, I'm Mary Howard. I represent Rutland City District 6. Gail Pezzo, Chittenden 20, Colchester.
Debbie Dolgan, I represent St. Johnsbury, Concord, and Kirby.
I'm Tom Charlton. I represent Athens, Grafton, Chester, and Wyndham.
Joe Parsons, Orange Caledonia.
Hi, good morning. Leonora Dodge from City of Essex Junction and Town of Essex.
Good morning, Ashley Bartley, Fairfax in Georgia.
Hi, Mark Mahaly, Callis, Plainfield, and Marshfield. Wei Wei, please tell us your name for the record and take it away.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Wei Wei Wong, she, her pronouns, Vermont Professionals of Color. I am based in South Burlington, so I love having my representative here to present to. So thank you all so much for having me today. I do have a presentation for you all, and I will share my screen. Like I said, my name is Wei Wei Wong. I am co-executive director and co-founder of the Vermont Professionals of Color Network. Let me just get my slides up. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. So thank you again so much for having me today. Let me just see if I can, here we go. So today I'll provide a basic overview of VTPOC and what we do as an organization. To start, I really wanted to show you the team at VTPOC. Our organization is made up of 6 full-time staff, 1 part-time staff, and 1 intern. The intern is not shown on the slide. But to give you an idea, we covered the entire state. I grew up in South Burlington. Mimi Dong, our outreach and member coordinator, grew up in St. Johnsbury. Erin Shaw, who is our community support coordinator, lives in East Thetford. Rahima Madane, who is our events coordinator, grew up in Bennington. So, and the other folks, we all live in Chittenden County, but I wanted to share that with you because we do cover all of Vermont. And we have built our organization on the core values of community, growth, leadership, equity, and service. So it makes sense that our mission is to advance the social and economic prosperity of the BIPOC community across our state. And we see our work through this image of this house. At the foundation, we are fostering community through networking, professional and business networking, and community-based events. We're helping people to connect to each other, to reduce isolation, and to instill a shared understanding that Vermont is home. We want our community to feel anchored to Vermont through these shared experiences and shared values. We've built the walls of our house around professional, business, and youth development, supporting these individuals to ensure that we have strong communities, a strong workforce, and a strong business community for the future of Vermont as well. Above all, we believe in supporting the community through advocacy, so research and data collection, which I'll talk about later. And we're working towards informing the community about what is happening at the state level so that they're aware of the policies that might directly impact their interests. So what is our work? Our work is focused on outreach, community building, research and data collection, resource navigation, and workforce and business development and retention. And I want to note that our work is partially funded through an ACCD contract, which came out of legislation that was supported by the House and the Senate. So our outreach goal is to ensure that all BIPOC Vermonters know about existing state-based and state-funded resources, as well as other relevant resources that meet their needs. Often the BIPOC community is the last to know about existing opportunities because most legacy institution networks don't really include our community. They're a little bit more siloed, which isn't to say that they're not working to expand their outreach. And VTPOC works hard to ensure that we have a variety of methods to reach the BIPOC community and the Vermont community at large. We have a large digital presence, as you can see on the slide, as well as printed and in-person outreach methods. In the last year and a half, we've tabled at 13 events across the state, and we want to make sure to meet people where they're at, literally. Since we received the ACCD funding, we have developed a strategy to build on the work that we had already started working on before we received that funding. So in the summer of 2023, we identified that we would focus our outreach efforts initially in the Northeast region. We began by having a digital presence and then getting to know individuals within the area. Our member and outreach coordinator, Mimi, like I had mentioned, grew up in St. Jay, and so has been developing deep ties to individuals, businesses, and organizations across the region to learn more about how to best reach the community, what are their needs. This past December, we hosted a networking event at Whirligig Brewery in St. Jay, and we had 30 BIPOC owners as well as allies attend, and then we also had 5 or 6 children also attend. And our hope is to continue this effort into the future, making sure to connect people to one another, to foster business development, to foster workforce development. And we would love to have continued funding support so that we can apply these strategies in the southern regions of the state as well. So usually once we have reached the community, we like to build events that connect them to one another. While networking, business and professional networking events have been a huge part of what we do, we also recognize that there are a lot of remote workers and young adults across the state, especially since the pandemic, and we have developed community building events for them to get to know Vermont and the BIPOC community at large to reduce that sense of isolation. So since the summer of 2023, we've held 34 events for the sole purpose of community building outside of professional and business networking events. So these events include Co-work and Chill, which is a monthly event held across the state at various locations. We identify partner venues, announce that staff members from VTPOC will be present at the location, and we invite folks to join us to co-work. And we've held these events in Chittenden County, Washington County, Upper Valley, and NEK thus far. We're working our way down to the southern part of the state. And it gives remote workers especially an opportunity to get to know their community, their local community, and to get to know one another, to socialize in that way, and also to work at the same time. And to get to know us as an organization, because as I'll mention in a second, we are here to help people to gain more knowledge about the various resources available. I want to take a moment to note this photo here. This was our rock climbing event at Petroglyphs in Burlington. And this was for young folks, for people to get out and move about in the wintertime. We like to have movement events to kind of break up that winter isolation feel. So like I mentioned, resource navigation is a big part of what we do as well. When someone arrives in Vermont, it's hard to know where everything is. Mostly, you can't get there from here. And we're also thinking about all of the great civic resources our state has to offer at the local level and also at the state level. And it can be overwhelming to start to look for those opportunities because we do have so much. So as part of the ACCD contract, VTPOC has been identifying these resources based on the needs of the community. So when someone does ask us, we know exactly where to send them. We do this for both professionals and for business owners. And I've written down our current process on this slide. Sometimes the individual just needs the information, and they take it and they go and they grow. And sometimes folks need a little bit more hand-holding, which is absolutely okay with us, which kind of gets us into our workforce and business development work. So we offer one-on-one support in career exploration, career navigation. We have worked with professionals to direct them to state-based resources, to potential employers. We have the connections, and sometimes that's just the leg up that you need. Our website also features a job and internship board, which features statewide opportunities from entities that are working to diversify their workforce. And we actually work with the state's Department of Human Resources to feature jobs across the various departments at the state level. We also host a civic engagement board, which features volunteer opportunities from municipalities, nonprofits, and other entities. And we want to make sure that our community is deeply involved, that they're getting involved in their communities, and they're rooting themselves in that and being able to showcase their skills outside of the workplace. We also support businesses to navigate through the startup and growth phases. There are over 6,000 nonprofits in the state of Vermont, and it's a little hard even for us to navigate to the right one. So we as an organization meet with partner organizations regularly so that we understand what they have to offer so that we can best direct folks to them. We work often with, for example, Vermont Community Loan Fund. We work with CVOEO, BDCC, all of the RDCs, or many of the RDCs, and other entities across the state, as well as financial institutions. One of the things that we do is grant and loan application assistance for individuals so that they can start up and scale up. We also have a relatively new program called Newcomer Nexus, and this is actually geared towards business owners and nonprofit organizations or organizations of any kind. And this is for folks who are looking to recruit BIPOC candidates and want to ensure that those candidates, once they are hired, have a smooth transition to life in Vermont. So the service starts from the point of hiring and follows the new employee across the first 3 to 6 months of transition to their new job or even to life in Vermont. We know that the employer's job is to make sure that the employee feels comfortable and welcome at the workplace. And so our job is really to focus on what happens outside of the workplace, make sure that they have that social safety net to create community and that sense of belonging. And our work wouldn't make sense if we didn't have some idea of or have the data to back up what we're actually doing, which is why research and data collection is a huge part of what we do. In 2022, supported by US SBA funding, we conducted a small business environment assessment along with Main Street Alliance. And we as an organization focus on the BIPOC business community. And we found that while the needs of the BIPOC business community was similar to all other businesses, access to resources was significantly different. So one of the results from the data collected was the building of a legal webinar series. There was a lot of hesitation around connecting to the legal community. So through the ACCD contract, we've partnered with the Vermont Small Business Law Center, which is based out of the law school. And this monthly virtual education seminar is also a place where folks can come and discuss legal topics that they are curious about, whether it's like contracts or compliance issues, digital privacy. We just had one on AI and intellectual property, so that small business owners know what is coming ahead of them. They can get their questions asked, and also to connect with the Vermont Small Business Law Center, which, if you don't know, it's a great program. They offer free legal education as well as 10 hours of free legal consultation. So data has been informing our work. And this past summer, we conducted another statewide survey. We're hoping to bring a report forward soon. And this time it's about the BIPOC community at large. We wanted to understand the challenges and opportunities for the BIPOC community across the state. We actually received 685 completed responses to that survey. And our initial analysis of that survey helped to inform our semi-structured focus groups that we completed in December. So I would love to come back to this committee in the near future to share some of those results and what next steps for us might result from that data. So we do a lot at VTPOC, and we've done it all in a short amount of time. We informally started in 2019, and we formally became a 501c3 in 2021. It's only been 4 years. We've done a lot, and I hope this committee sees the value of our work and will support continuing our funding so that we can continue doing this work in the future. Because really why we do it is to make sure that people have access. I look at it from a framework of access. This is one that I developed while I was at UVM Community Development and Applied Economics program. It's based in public health, but I've adapted it to apply to the work that we are doing now, because in order to economically and socially develop, in order to make sure that we have a strong workforce, we have to have access to resources. And access can be understood as being broken into 6 dimensions: availability of resources, awareness of resources, physical access to resources, affordability of resources, accommodation of the community by the resources, and acceptability of the resources by the community. And this last point can be understood as whether a resource is trusted by the community or not. For example, I'm really more likely to hire an electrician who graduated from CVCC or a tech school in Vermont because I can trust the quality of the programming that they offer and the care that they place into educating their students. So in order for an entire community to have access, for all Vermonters to have access, all 6 dimensions must be active and present. Otherwise, somebody is missing out. And right now, for the VTPOC BIPOC community, awareness is a significant issue. And that's why we do what we do in terms of outreach, making sure that we have an awareness of resources so that our community can have awareness of resources. And I do want to make a point that when we say professionals, we know that there's a little bit of stigma with that language. We want to make sure that folks understand that we're talking about all professionals. We define it, and we're trying to redefine this term. And we believe that a professional is any individual who is dedicated to developing expertise in a skill or craft and contributes to personal growth and or societal improvement. So that goes for not just someone who's working at, a for-profit institution. We're also talking about the plumber, the electrician, the stay-at-home mom. We consider all these individuals to be professionals, and they can all utilize our services. So to kind of sum up our work, we are helping people to develop a sense of community, to reduce isolation, and to anchor them here in Vermont, to make Vermont home. We are working to increase folks' awareness of the many career advancement opportunities and resources that Vermont has to offer, so that they're not feeling excluded from these resources. And we want to support businesses to connect them to the right resources that can help them grow and to scale. I've put into the slides some relevant links, our website, our job and internship board, our newcomer nexus page, as well as our BIPOC business directory, which I didn't really mention, but it has over 400 BIPOC owned businesses listed. So next time you'll want to go out, eat lunch, please take a look at our directory, support the businesses there, and take a look at what we have developed. So that is, for now, my introduction. I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Wei Wei. Any questions by the committee? Yes.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for coming in and presenting on this. I wanted to just get a sense of, aside from the funding, depending on coming to us for funding, is there any other sort of legislative assistance or amplification of message that could be helpful to the organization? I think that The governor has spoken, I think, on some occasions, our treasurer has spoken on some occasions about the importance of growth in this population for the future of our state. And so do you see the legislators, do you connect with legislators in the different regions to try to, have us lend an ear and give some support?
That's a great question. I really appreciate that. That is something that we're actively working towards. This is my second year coming into the State House, so trying to still figure out how we want to engage with legislatures. What is the best way? What is the best approach? So we're starting to slowly work to speaking more with individual legislatures to start to work towards that. That's part of the reason I wanted to have this introduction to get to know this committee. I've never presented here before and wanted to understand more about what you all do. The work that you all do in housing is really relevant to us as an organization because so many of our community members are deeply impacted, not just the folks who are already living here, but there are a lot of folks who are still living outside of the state and commuting on a monthly basis from Arizona, from Texas, from other parts of the country, and because they can't find housing. So I see the work that you all do here as deeply important, as well as like the fact that you're all focused on labor. We see that as a huge need. We have so many job opportunities across the state, and one of the youngest growing demographics is the BIPOC community. They're highly educated, they're highly skilled. And so how do we take advantage of the fact that we have many people here, and yet we still, as an organization, anecdotally are hearing, hey, I'm still looking for a job, where do I go? A lot of that is opening up the aperture of awareness of what they can do. Something that we internally have spoken about this week is a lot of folks don't realize that even though they have skill in one area, they can transfer it to another whole career. And so that is something we're also focusing on as an organization, making sure that folks aren't necessarily stuck in a certain mindset, because there's so many great job options for them out there. Especially.
Thank you very much.
No.
Appreciate your testimony. Is Don?
No,
Don is not here.
He's not here. Jeff, do you want to go sit down?
Thank you.
Wei Wei.
Thank you, Wei Wei. Great presentation, great work. That's really exciting. All those pictures of the young workers.
Our next witness is Jeff Bannon, and Jeff, I have to confess, as a constituent, he has power over me, so.
I don't know about that.
Also, I think,
my constituents.
yes, well, he has power over me.
Right.
I think you were here when the committee introduced itself, were you?
I was, yes.
Yes. So would you tell us your name for the record and tell us, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Actually, I have to interrupt for 1 minute. What's been passed around to you, members of the committee, right now is the draft letter that we're sending appropriations. At the conclusion of Jeff's testimony, we'll go over that one. And I do want to ask, is that letter now posted?
No, would you like it?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
You all set?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Bannon, Executive Director of Vermont NEA. Thank you for having me here today to talk with you. I spoke yesterday with your chair. Thought I would give you an introduction, a little bit of 101 about labor law as we see it at Vermont NEA, and a little bit about what Vermont NEA is and what we do. So if you want to stop me anywhere along the ways, please do. Ask me any questions. Try to do the best. As your chair pointed out, I do live in Calais. My wife also, full disclosure, worked with Representative Mahaly on the select board. And so There's some connection there. Good.
Fine lawyer in.
Well, we met, that's a great introduction. So my wife and I are both University of Vermont graduates. I came from down country. She's a 7th generation Vermonter. Grew up, family roots are in Barnet, but mom and dad, she grew up mostly in Georgia. So they live right on Route 7. They have a sheep farm.
Great place to live.
Yeah, yeah. So father taught for 37 years at BFA St. Albans. 80, I don't know. I don't want to guess at his age. Anyway, so we both UVM grads. I was from afar. We relocated back to Vermont many, many years ago to raise our family. It's a great place, great schools, and that's why I work for Vermont NEA. Before working at Vermont NEA, I was as executive director for the last 9 years. Before that, I was general counsel at Vermont NEA for 16 years. And before that, I worked for the healthcare. I was the general counsel for the healthcare administration under then BISHCA. We're right now sort of what Green Mountain Care Board does, so I understand their world a little bit. And before that, I worked for private sector labor unions in Washington, D.C. at a law firm. So I've been doing this work for a long time. I did ERISA work. I did labor law. ERISA work is the pension and healthcare work that the unions have federally or privately. But here in Vermont, at Vermont NEA, Don Tinney couldn't be here. He's a 31-year English teacher, taught at BFA St. Albans, and he's the elected president of Vermont NEA. In addition, you'll see me. You'll also see Colin Robinson. He's our director of political programs. And Colin grew up in Putney. And likewise, you may also see Becca McBroom. Rebecca is our general counsel. She too is a Vermonter. And she may be in this committee a little bit as you take up labor law matters. She's our expert in the House on labor matters. So Becca's a good source as well. She'll be in and out of the committee or in and out of the State House. What is Vermont NEA? Vermont NEA is a labor union. David spoke on behalf of Working Vermont earlier, representing a coalition of labor unions. Vermont NEA is one of those members of Working Vermont. And we represent about 13,000 members. They're teacher members and support staff, ESP, as we call them, education support professionals or teachers. I will use probably those terms throughout.
Could you repeat that? How many members?
Just in the 13,000. And we're in every school district, public school in the state. As well, we're in 2 of the 4 historic academies, Burton and Thetford Academy. We represent the members there. So we, and I'll get to how that came to be. That may be important for your purposes. So we do represent people in private schools as well as public schools, and we do have some private sector employers. We cover their employees as well. So that puts us under state law as well as some coverage under the National Labor Relations Act and the Labor Management Disclosure Act, LMRDA, Benjamin Griffin from 1959. And that requires certain reporting disclosures to happen and have for 60 years, 60 plus years. Anyway, we are governed by a 20-member board of teachers and ESPs from around the state. We have a bus driver. We have many teachers, support staff, paraeducators, and they meet usually about once a month and establish our policies. I won't share this all with you, but I'm happy to if you'd like it. But that's our legislative agenda. I've shared that in the House Education Committee last week. I'm happy to share it with you and send it along if you'd like. But it covers a lot. We have 13,000 members, as I say, and they have a lot of things to say on a lot of different matters. So a lot of our focus traditionally is on schools, but we do look elsewhere. For example, housing is of concern to us. We know that housing is of concern to this committee, but it's a concern to my members because housing costs a lot and it makes it difficult for them to change jobs maybe or live in a new community. So we appreciate the good work you do in housing that we understand that affects us all. At Vermont NEA, we almost exclusively, not exclusively, but almost exclusively hire former teachers to work with our members around the state. And what I mean by that is our model is this. We work with teachers, support staff to bargain contracts and then administer them, collective bargaining agreements. So I'll use that term as well, CBAs, collective bargaining agreements or contracts They're one and the same for me. And they are a contract that group of employees represented by a union, which is their exclusive bargaining agent, and their employer bargain the terms and conditions of employment. And that's then reduced to writing a contract and both sides sign it. I'll back up a half a step. How do you get to be a union? How do you get to be represented by a union? That's one of the things is of jurisdiction here in this committee. David spoke about card check. That's one way. It used to be that you had to go to an election all the time. And that's another way. So, and that's still an option at some level. But when a group of employees want to be represented by a labor union, they sign an authorization card. It's called a showing of interest, and they can file that with the Vermont Labor Relations Board in our public school setting. And then, assuming there's a majority, the union is, certified as the exclusive bargaining agent on behalf of all the employees in the bargaining unit. So it might be just the teachers, it might just be the school bus drivers, paraeducators. It depends on how that group of employees come together. It does not have to be the best unit. It has to be an appropriate unit of employees. So that's an appropriate unit of employees. And that's determined at the labor board. And those people then become members of the union if they want to be. They don't have to be. They can voluntarily join or not to join. The union, somewhat paradoxically, the union is obligated to represent everybody in the union, whether they are a member or not. It's called the duty of fair representation. So they have to represent everybody. So when they're at the bargaining table, you couldn't say union members get $1 raise and non-members get 10 cents. That would be unlawful. I submit that would be, I don't know that it is, but so we don't do that. We bargain on behalf of everybody, whether they're a member or not. We represent them when we're administering the contract, which is sometimes filing grievances, sometimes speaking with management about certain matters. We represent everybody there, whether they're in the unit in the union or not. So it doesn't matter. We've got a duty to fairly represent everybody in the union. And that's by law. So what is collective bargaining? Collective bargaining is when the union, the employees represented by their union, sit down with management and bargain a contract about the terms and conditions of employment. That's one of the terms of art. And it lays out all the do's and don'ts, salary and other things. One thing that does not include today is we now bargain at the state level with the School Boards Association for statewide health care. That was a proposal back in 2017 that the governor saw. It finalized in 2018. So now we bargain for healthcare at the state level for all school employees, whether they're in the union or not. It includes everybody, principals, people who are not management folks. The only group that it does not include, it did initially, but does not now, are the superintendents. They bargain on behalf of themselves for their healthcare, not through the statewide initiative. So that's a little bit different. There are 3 labor laws. I'll go through them quickly. There are state employees, and Representative Howard may know a little bit about that. So you may want to hear from VSEA, the Vermont State Employees, about SELRA, the State Employees Labor Relations Act, and that covers the state employees. And then there is the teacher law under Title 16, which is part of your jurisdiction, the labor law component of that, and that's about teachers. And then there's the municipal labor law, MELRA, as we call it. MELRA covers municipal employees. So it might be your snowplow driver in your town. It might be other people working in town. But school employees who are not teachers are covered by MELRA. So an aside of that, which is not part of this committee's jurisdiction, it's more GovOps, is pensions. Mm-hmm. So 2/3 of the people in the state municipal employee pension plan are school-based employees, kind of an oddity. And then, of course, you've got the state teachers retirement system, which is all the licensed teachers. Again, in that case, includes principals as well as superintendents. Anybody who has a license is included in the state teacher retirement system. Both those plans are contributory. In other words, people contribute towards their pension. And so the oddities are that municipal employees, you think of your people who work in your town, and it does include that, but a huge number of those people in there, we always say about 2/3 of the people in the municipal employment retirement system are school-based employees. So there are a lot of people who are covered by the municipal labor law who are school-based employees. You may want to get an update from Ledge Council on these things, but so I'll go through them, but they may want to go into greater detail as you seek. Those labor laws, those 3 labor laws, are actually, there's a 4th for court employees, and I don't understand it well. So VSEA may give you chapter and verse on that, or Ledge Council. But these are your jurisdiction as this committee, part of your portfolio. You also have employment laws, and that's sort of what your previous witness talked about, really, is employment laws. They're under Title 21, a little bit different than labor laws. In fact, very different than labor laws. So what David spoke about when he spoke about misclassification, for example, and things of that, that's more of an employment law issue. And what he did talk about is some employers actually have come to realize that there is some benefit to having a labor union where you have one contract that governs all the employees and their terms and conditions of employment. You don't have multiple asks and different policies that relates to this group of employees or that employees. You've got one contract that covers everybody. So it might be simpler in many cases for an employer to have a union. You don't, understand that all the time, but it seems like more and more as employees step up and seek representation through a union these days, some employers are figuring out, wait, this may be a better way for me to go, quite truthfully. So it's an evolution. Labor law has been around since the 1930s. And the state teacher labor law came around, was enacted in 1968. I wasn't here then, but anyway, it's been around for a long time.
Can I ask a couple of
Sure.
questions?
Fire away.
Can you explain, help me with my ignorance on the relationship between the local representation and VTNEA and then the big USNEA?
Great segue. So we, one of the things we talk about are local contracts. Your local teachers in your neighborhood school bargaining contract with their local school board. It might be it's mostly done out almost exclusively at the supervisory union level. And we'll come back to that, but maybe there might be 5 places where it happens in the future, given yesterday's conversation. That'll be interesting. And we can manage.
Oh, no, I think it was statewide contracts, actually.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, collective bargaining is between employees and their employer. So if your employer is the local school board, you sit down with them, bargain your contract, and your terms and conditions of employment, and you form a local, in our world, we have a local association. That's our nomenclature. And it might be the South Burlington Education Association, for example, and they bargain their contract, and they affiliate with Vermont NEA, and Vermont NEA also affiliates with NEA, the National Education Association. So the NEA in DC is a national organization. It's a 3 million member union. It's the largest union in the country. And it is unaffiliated with the AFL-CIO, for example. There's relationships, obviously, but they're not part of the AFL-CIO. And so it's an affiliation, and members, it's a 3-tiered affiliation. So if you join at your local level, you join at the state level and the national level.
So how does information get disseminated from NEA to the local level?
Well, we can always do better. I'll just admit to that. But we communicate, nowadays, mostly through email. We have a website, we have social media posts, and that's how we communicate with our members directly. NEA does the same through us mostly. And we could do better, obviously, but during the pandemic, for example, our open rates on emails and that sort of thing were off the charts, and any organization was finding the same, because that was the way to get information. That's tailed off a little bit and gone back to more normal. out of the pandemic.
So are local affiliates also members of the NEA,
Yes,
not just VTNEA?
correct.
Okay.
So there are 3 tiers, if you will.
Is it on them to get the NEA information, or is it on the VTNEA to pass it down?
Well, I would say it's a two-way street, truthfully. If they have questions, they ask, and they're not, my members are, the Vermont NEA members are not bashful, or the local association members are not bashful typically. So you have a local association president, you might have a local association treasurer, you might have a local association membership person. So there are levels of people at the local level. We hire teachers, as I said, who then work with those local people to train them to bargain their contracts and then administer them. So everybody who sits and assists a local association at the bargaining table is typically an educator, a teacher who came up to doing the same thing. We don't send lawyers to the bargaining table. We've heard, the NEA lawyers are this and that. That's just not true. We don't send lawyers to the bargaining table. We have 2 lawyers on staff, back our general counsel and associate general counsel and Kelly Everhart. They handle member matters as they evolve and get more difficult and complex. And I say member matters, that's usually agreements, what that is.
My other very quick question is, are there any districts that are not unionized in Vermont?
I do not believe so. I'm hesitating. You mean a public school district?
Yeah.
I do not believe so.
Good question.
So the labor law has been around since teacher law since 1968. And most every place has been organized, that's been unionized, organized as well. At this point, one thing I think it's worth noting in this committee, and based on yesterday's conversation, so Act 46 some years ago merged governance structures of school districts. So you went from, you might have had 5 school districts. So in our little community, Representative Mahali, we had 5 school boards for the 5 elementary schools, and then U32, you have the Union School District Board. That's now 1. That was the merger under Act 46. Frankly, we were trying to do that ourselves many years before that. We were trying to bargain at the SU level. We thought it was more efficient and a better way to do it, because that's what we saw, and we were trying to seek that. So we found that the law actually to be helpful. We navigated changing representation of employees and unions and unionized employees where they weren't through Act 46. And we imagine we'll do the same under the governor's proposal of yesterday, whatever shape or form that takes at the end, that we'll have to make sure that people who are unionized and want to be represented by a union and still are represented by that union once we navigate whether we get to 5 or some other number, whatever the case may be. So I think it's something we've done in the past and can do it again. But it's truly collective bargaining is between an employee, their union, and the employer. So whoever the union is got to be where, in our humble opinion, is where you need to be bargaining. So I know I've wavered off a little bit from your question, Representative Burrows, but I'm happy to stick to it if you need more.
Does the NEA represent employees who teach at the Vermont State Colleges?
No.
Okay, so it's not higher ed.
AFT.
It's AFT and VSEA, and you should probably hear from them directly about where their lines are. I don't want to.
I should know that, but I've forgotten.
Yeah.
Does the committee have any other questions? Jeff, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Appreciate your time.
You're around, I'm around a lot. And if you have any questions, go for it. Holler. Thank you.
Thanks.
We have one final item this morning, and just by way of anticipating, then we have lunch, and I would like a little committee time just to talk about some housekeeping things here. They're just various small things that have come up. But do you feel like we can? I'd like to give you a little background on this letter, which has been passed around. Is that okay? So just a few factors which influence this letter. Federal funds, a combination of kind of a waterfall was anticipated in last year's budget. And it said that if federal funds were available and unexpended. I'm not going to get into which. VHC would get 30 million. VHCB would get 30 million.
Sorry, can I interrupt really
Sure.
quickly? Do all of the new members know and understand what the Budget Adjustment Act is?
Well, maybe that's a good thing. Why don't we talk about
Sorry.
that? The budget so you have the budget. The budget is passed, hopefully, out of the House sometime in March, and then gets to the Senate and passes out of the Senate. And this is an ordinary process, not extraordinary. And the governor, and the governor signs it. Or he doesn't sign it and we have to have an override session. But one of the things that everybody struggles to do is make sure that we have a budget by July 1, which is the beginning of the fiscal year. It goes July 1 to June 30th. And the budget is named for the latter year, the later year. So for example, this budget that we are going to start looking at, in a little while, and the budget address is coming up next week, I believe on Tuesday, and the governor's budget address. That's the 25-26 budget, goes from July 1 to June 30th, okay? But we call it the 26 budget, even though it's 25-26, okay? The problem is that the budget is based on anticipated revenue. And the revenue from taxes, not just property taxes, in fact, income taxes, corporate taxes, et cetera, is variable depending on economic activity. So we have a board which examines what's the latest information, and it meets several times a year and updates the information. And in fact, there was one such update yesterday. So there's one in the fall, late fall. Anybody remember what month it is?
Right now?
No. Anyway, one in the late fall and then one right now. So what we have is something called the Budget Adjustment Act. And it's like the budget, and that the governor proposes a Budget Adjustment Act. It goes right to appropriations. Usually, the Budget Adjustment Act is a basket of that you can dump different things in. Most of what's in there are technical corrections, mistakes that we made in the literal mistakes that were made in the budget that just have to be corrected.
Right.
But also adjustments to funding because we didn't anticipate the right number that was going to be spent. For example, in the Governor's Budget Adjustment Act, I'm using really round numbers. There's a couple of $100 million of extra money out of an $8 billion budget, but a couple of $100 million. And a good part of that, more than half, I think, is going to fix some Medicare related things. So it's not like, oh my God, 100 million, stick it in my wallet. It's not like that. All right. However, as of earlier this week, there probably was fairly much in excess of $80 million, which was extra money. The governor decided that he wanted to take the 80 million and just put it over to the budget and not spend any of it.
So next fiscal year's general fund.
Yeah, it would
Moving
be,
forward.
he would, in his budget proposal, allocate it some way or another. It turns out that yesterday we found that we have actually good news. We've had even better economic activity than anticipated. So we have more than that, high 80s. So anyway, a choice the legislature has to make is, well, do we agree with the governor? Do we want to sock it away and put it in the budget? Or do we want to allocate some of it for specific purposes? One of the major goals I know of appropriations is to consider allocating it for housing because it's such a crisis and providing that now. Partly because of a concern that it might not be in the budget, but who knows? And partly, I think, really because we keep hearing that the development process is a long process and the developers need certainty. And that there's really an advantage when an agency has money. So for example, VHCB has right now about $13 million to hand out in its current round, but it's got like 50 million. I might have the numbers wrong. It's got like $50 million of applicants. So the question is, how many applicants? People are lined up ready to build housing. Okay, so anyway, do you feel you want to add anything to that?
I think that's perfect. I just want to make sure that everyone
Yeah.
who's coming
Thank you.
in knew what was going on.
Okay, so as with go ahead.
Just backing up to your point about, so this money, you're saying that this discussion is about money budgeted for fiscal year 25, which we are in the halfway point of that fiscal year.
Correct. And you have a
So
little
that
more than
excess is for this
this year.
And so we are just making suggestions for adjusting how we're gonna keep on allocating funds from now till June 30th.
Correct.
Okay.
And so we know that there was in the budget, the anticipation that we might have extra federal money. And the idea was the first dibs on that money was VHCB to the tune of 30 million. The second dibs after the 30 million went to VHCB. The next dibs would be VHCB for their middle income programs.
Okay.
And
VHFA.
VHFA, excuse me, VHFA, okay. So there's a little art going on here. I have, due to various conversations, concluded that no, I couldn't just ask for, and by the way, it never materialized. The federal money was used for
Oh,
something
right.
else or never materialized. So both agencies got zip. Okay. So I think that there is a strong sentiment. Yes, you have a question?
So when you have the excess money, who makes the decision of where it's allocated? And can it be allocated anywhere, general funds or specific?
Yes, it can be, and the decision is made first by the legislature and then by the governor as to whether it's done. It's like any other bill. After we're done with it in the House and the Senate, it goes to the governor and he can veto it.
So, but if it goes to the general funds, can that be taken out of the general funds at any time if it's needed somewhere?
No, if we appropriate it in the BAA, it's just like the budget. The budget doesn't just dump stuff in the general fund. It appropriates it for specific agencies. And stuff.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
So none of this money materialized. VHCB got zip, VHFA got zip. Okay, so 30 million plus 25 million is 55 million. My sources and my thinking is when I was on the appropriations committee, we used to get letters from other committees, some of which were very helpful because they actually ranked. Here's where we think the money should go, and the amount was realistic. Some of which were, hey, the kitchen sink, all of it, please, everything. And that wasn't too helpful. We thought you're not deciding it, I guess we're gonna decide.
Right.
So I don't think that it's probably advisable to ask for the full 30 plus 25, et cetera. Okay, so what I did was, if you look at the numbers, the Housing Conservation Board, I put 25, not 30. And I proportionately turned down in almost identical proportion VHFA to 20 million. Okay. And then I put in, you remember the third pilot project of the developmentally disabled housing where they need $2.8 million. VHFA is funding part of it. And I put that in. And then the Human Rights Commission, they appeared before us and they said, for the budget, we're overwhelmed for the budget, not for the BAA, for the budget. We really need like 6 positions, which is something we'll have to face later. But I asked them, given how overwhelmed you are, do you have a BAA request? And the BAA request is to be able to hire 2 people and but only for the 3 months of the remaining of this fiscal year. So anyway, that's the 62,000.
And that will get them out of the immediate burnout
They can hire someone now.
backlog.
No, that's not right. What she said, what Amanda said yesterday was that they're $38,000 in the hole.
Yeah, that's
And
in the
there's a-
governor's budget. See, one of the things, now I'm gonna get to a wrinkle. You with me so far before I get to the wrinkle?
What?
Only half because we have to do the.
Okay,
That's right.
yeah, here's.
So they're not gonna be able to hire anybody because they're already $38,000 in the
Yeah.
hole, which is what their BAA requests.
Okay, so here's the thing. If we know something's gonna be in the budget and the agency's okay with that, like they don't need it now, they could have it, later in July, August, September, then we don't need to, it doesn't need to go in the BAA, okay? It's gonna be in the budget. So it's when it's really needed, it would be consumed soon, and it's not gonna be in the budget. So anyway, there's something like $37,000 that the Human Rights Commission need, but they wrote me, it's in the governor's budget. And they're happy with that. So that's not included here. Okay, but now there's a big wrinkle.
Mhm.
The big wrinkle is in the important caveat section here. I have learned from unnamed sources that there is a substantial possibility that the governor's budget will include the $20 million for the Vermont housing, will include 20 million or more, or a substantial part of this for the Vermont Housing Finance Agency. But it's sort of delicate. At this point, we can't say definitively what's in the budget. So what I'm doing in this letter is I'm saying, okay, this is the way it is. Remember, this is just our giving advice to them. The appropriations are not going to finally approve the BAA until after the governor's budget, 2 days after the governor's budget. So what they really want to do is get it all lined up. And then we'll all listen to the governor's budget. They'll get a briefing and they'll make adjustments. So given that, in this draft, what I did was I just left it in because we can't say it's definitively it's in the governor's budget, and just said, if it's in the governor's budget, then you take out the 20 million. But then I said, I think you should reallocate some of this, not all of it, some of it to the HFA, the VHCB. And the reason is they can absorb it. The VHCB, first of all, they're an agency that has a huge number of programs. You guys saw that. Almost all these things that come before us, they're a piece of it. They're a piece of so many things. But the other thing is, in the last 4 years, they get a certain base amount of money, which is a combination of the sales tax and other percentages of certain taxes. It's a base. But in the last 4 years, they have had an average of about $40 million. It's an average. Some was more, some was less, over base. And they got it out the door. So $40 million a year,
Right.
they can absorb. They could absorb that money now. And so I suggested putting, hey, if it's in the budget, then reallocate some of it to VHCB, such as 35 to 40 million. So that is I'm sorry to be so wordy.
So the caveat is addressing the number one.
It's a number 1 and
Priority.
2. Yeah, it's 2. It would mean we don't have to worry about 2.
Yeah. So in other words,
So
instead
so
of
don't make it
instead of
25
25
million,
and
yeah.
20, it would be
35 to
35
to 40.
35, 40-ish.
Yeah, just leave it to them.
Got
So
it.
that was that's what went into this.
I was just wondering what happened to LAOB.
They didn't make,
They're fine until
Okay.
the budget.
Yeah, they're okay for the budget.
Thank you.
Yes.
So this is based on only on the people that we've heard from so far, and I wonder whether does this committee have any role in helping people who have lost their homes to flooding in the last year? And shouldn't that be also a priority if it is, because they're,
All I know two things, which is not a complete answer, Elizabeth. One, this letter is due in a few hours.
Mhm.
Two, there is a flood caucus now, of which I am a member. Because, hey, Plainfield. And there's various pieces of legislation and budget being prepared, but I don't think anything is quite ready yet. So partly it's not ready yet. I have to say, I haven't I haven't gone out and sent letters to everybody who has anything to do with housing and saying, hey, do you have any BAA requests? I pretty much compiled this from listening to the testimony that we received and conversations with the parties that I know, including the housing people, the person who does housing for the appropriations committee.
okay, as one person, I would prefer it if we could just make absolutely sure that there's no flood-related funding that's out there that needs to be addressed, that our committee has jurisdiction over. Because I think it would be, I understand the budget versus the BAA, but knowing that those funds are completely dry already, I just want to make sure that,
I think the way to do that would be through Teddy.
okay,
Teddy is the chair of the flood caucus. I'm just trying to think how I do that. I can try to communicate with Teddy.
and my other personal preference would be that since the Human Rights Commission is only $60,000, that it be moved up in priority, because it's an easy, I mean, if these are ranked priorities.
Yeah.
That would be my preference.
Yeah, two excellent points on the flood, and just as a general rule of budgeting things, that I don't like the last part of the Human Rights Commission one. Telling somebody that I don't know what the future is going to hold, but we got the money for 3 months. It's not a great way to say we're going to go out and hire people. So whether that means we take one position and put the full cost of that position in this, or two, I'm just saying, be much happier with them
Well, the other thing that it could mean.
covering it for a year.
The other thing that it could mean, we don't know, but the other thing that it could mean is that they could hire temporary lawyers to address some of the backlog that they already have. And I mean, maybe they could, rather than hiring a full-time, we don't know.
I don't know that that's a thing for that.
Right, I'm just,
Yeah.
I can tell you a conversation I had, which is not satisfactory. I was bothered by this for exactly the reason that you said. So I asked appropriations, how do you handle situations where you're adding people and it's only, do they only include, because you see, this is just 3 months, is what this is.
Mhm.
And they said, no, or do you put the whole thing in it? I said, no, you don't put the whole thing in. And I said, isn't that problematic? And they said, yes.
Agree.
I'm sorry. I mean, part of the problem is this happened last night and this morning.
Yeah.
And I just haven't you know.
Yeah, so that's what I'd be on that. I would much prefer
I
to say,
think that.
would you like an
to say-
intake or a staff attorney and fully fund it through
Well,
this? So.
Go on.
Request, and then.
Yeah.
And this isn't just a you thing, this seems to be a common thing of, we always talk about VHCB, like we gotta show that we're putting money in the pipeline and things like that. And this year they're down to 13, which is much different than I think last year when they were asking for BA money and they had like 40 something million still in the bank. But we don't seem like this below it says, but if VHFA is going to be included in the budget, then grab this. We don't use that same logic of, we need to keep money in the pipeline to let people know that, it seems like it's verbiage for VHCB sometimes.
VHCB alerted me to this and requested it.
I think VHFA's programs
I mean,
are,
excuse me,
oh,
I apologize. I keep too many Bs.
there's a way too
Lot of
many.
bees, lot of bees.
VHFA has just contacted me and they're satisfied with this approach. So I
I'm
think
not.
they have a pipeline.
Are you worried, are you
I
worried
think
about?
they have a pipeline that's good through the end of the fiscal year and they know they're gonna be in the budget. I'll tell you what. Hold on,
I know Tom had it.
Chad, do you want to talk or not want to talk?
Chad Simmons, Vermont Housing Finance Agency. I think the chair's explanation was spot on. I think this is a timing issue that we're both want to be open to the legislature's policy goals and appropriation goals, as well as interested to hear what the administration would like to invest in for housing in the coming year. So for us, our well is zero. We don't have any dollars available, but we know the pipeline exists if we were to get money for both of those two middle income programs.
So this language is,
The
Okay.
language is okay, and I think your explanation, Chair, was spot on for kind of the dance we're doing.
so is this in part because you think the developmentally disabled housing initiative and the,
That's fine. Yeah,
excuse me, the middle income homeownership and the revolving loan fund are good
I think
programs,
a great program.
great programs, you want to make sure that they're adequately funded.
Right, along with the VHIP program as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just, using the same logic of keeping money going and letting everyone know that we're investing in these things.
VHIP is not named.
No.
I know, but I
Yeah.
think it's out of money.
VHIP is out.
Yeah, they're all, I mean, I think that shows either need to be upping our investment in that type of stuff. They seem to burn through as quick as anybody. And the bringing units online for a much smaller investment. So.
Do you have a comment, Tom?
I had a comment going back to the Human Rights Commission. Should we clarify or just explain that this is in anticipation of additional positions and is here for the purpose of beginning hiring soon?
We could do that.
I mean, so that
There's only, as far as I can,
because this gets approved, what did you say, 2 days after the general budget?
yeah, there's a couple of different possibilities. And I think that the Human Rights Commission in some ways is gonna have to carry their water with appropriation. We could leave it as it is with the I'm just gonna go through options. We can just leave it as it is with the possibility that it might die because it may be that they won't include anything in the BAA because they feel like they're not ready to commit permanently to the positions. That's one possibility. You follow what I'm saying? In other words, the Appropriations Committee might just say, we're not going to start funding these. Unless we're willing to go on with the whole thing. we could put language in that we support the eventual, this is done, just like you said, in anticipation of full funding in the budget. We can't stop whatever they're gonna do. Remember, this is just us as advisors.
Yeah.
I certainly intend, are we getting big in here?
They have not
Right.
responded to your email as far as I know.
That's because my email went to a bad email address. Have you contacted them?
We had not
Okay.
contacted them yet, but we can.
But I have been corresponding with them. I will advise them to testify before the appropriations committee. 'Cause
And we,
Yeah.
as members, we can also go down there and advocate for things that are important as legislators.
Yes, there's a hearing
We get 2 minutes.
today.
As long as they're informed one way or the other, they know that
Well,
we're not
I can
asking
put
for-
language to that effect. Do people?
we're not asking for a couple of 3-month positions.
Right,
Right.
yeah, let's put
Really
clarification,
not what.
Okay, I'll put clarification.
put clarification language. I think
Okay.
that's great.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can do that. All right.
Address the deficit and get over the backlog
Yeah.
until, to sustain until the budget.
Mhm.
Okay,
That's good.
okay.
That's exactly what the adjustment is supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's-
Okay, we can put that in. Do you want to indicate that? Do you want me to leave it where it is or move it up?
What was the move up suggestion?
That makes,
Oh, that's-
oh,
It's only $60,000 I've spent and it's gonna keep
Oh, I
it
see.
sustained.
I mean, I'm.
It
As an
seems like a
approach-
no-brainer to
as an
me.
Yeah, what
approach
do you-
member, do you
right.
think that's helpful to really, to help highlight it?
Yeah, I think we can put it. In fact, maybe in some ways, we just don't put it in 1, 2, 3, 4. We just put it first as a priority. Okay, I can do that.
Bullets instead of.
Yeah.
Use bullets instead of numbers.
Well, they want me to prioritize the money. But I think precisely because it is so small.
It is very little.
I can say, this isn't, we're just putting it first because we think it's so important to try to get this going.
Yeah.
It's, but then we're prioritizing the remaining. I can do something like that.
And maybe some wording about like that. I mean, Vermont is defaulting on an obligation by not hearing, this, and taking up these cases. I mean, this is a statewide,
No, this is a
defense.
problem.
We have to.
Okay. I do think would be good. The hearing is today, I think, in the afternoon, isn't it?
I am
No.
confused. I think it's now
Tuesday.
next Tuesday. I was confused. I thought
The
You
28th.
guys tell-
the BAA.
The BAA hearing, when's the BAA hearing before?
Oh,
Can you guys find out when the BAA hearing is before,
Chad, do you know?
the appropriations committee?
Jensen and BHA, it is today.
Oh, it is today.
At what time?
It's 1:00.
Wow. Oh, okay.
Okay, so
We're almost there.
I think it'd be good if one person or just went down there.
Oh, not all of us?
You can all go, but I know that Robin has commented to me that she wants the people on here
To be able to.
testifying, Chad. She wants the people on here testifying, but she does not want multiple.
You have the inside track for being on that committee.
I have a quick question. So, our purview is not transportation, but it's intimately tied. Housing and transportation are intimately tied. And we know that our public transit dollars are, are suffering. Can we speak to, can we back up what the work of other committees, or because of transportation dollars are separate, we
The
can't
transportation.
speak?
There's no reason why we could not include support for a BA. It would have to be a specific request by
Right.
the Transportation Committee for funds.
Uh-huh.
If there is such a specific BA request, we can support it.
Okay. Okay,
Can you find out
I will.
right away?
Yeah,
Well, it's okay as long as I get it to them.
okay.
I'm
So,
just a stickler because everybody was always late.
oh,
As
what's
I
our
said-
argument?
I said, damn it.
No,
I'm
you're,
still-
you're setting the standard. So what happens? So you're gonna go refresh and get us a clean copy for vote, or can we vote on it?
I
with
think
the
you can vote on.
I
it.
agree, cause
Vote on
yeah,
it, trust me.
I'm
I'll-
hungry.
I'll do my very best. And if I mess it up, you can tell me that you won't trust me anymore.
well, we can't have that, damn it.
Okay. Is there,
I think
so,
this transparency is great. I mean, it's.
so I don't think we need a roll call.
I would just ask how we're handling the VHFA programs. I'm fine if we like knock the money down to lesser amount. I just want to keep that going along.
Just to keep it named.
Okay, what if we put in here
That's
language,
fine.
in this caveat? I'll put in language rather than just say, take the money, take it all away from them. I'll say, leaving enough to make sure that each of these programs has sufficient funding to run through the end of the fiscal year.
Or no, has something in the pipe to keep the avenue, but I think
Right.
that's what you're aiming at, right, Joe?
My preference would probably be more getting rid of the caveat and just putting
Just leave it.
10 million there or 15, I don't know, but instead of letting them know like, oh, don't worry, it kind of gives in, already puts in their mind the idea of don't worry about it. If you're giving a caveat of, if it's gonna be in the budget, just nix it.
How about we put a sum in there, say 5 million? How about I'm gonna leave the 20 million. First of all, I want to leave the 20 million.
Okay.
Because, it could materialize that it's not in the budget. Okay. But supposing I say, instead of what I put here, supposing I say, in which case, and then they'd get 5 million to make sure and blah, blah, blah. Just put it right in there.
I'll trust your judgment on that, Chair.
Okay. Uh-oh. I know what happens when someone tells me, I'll trust your judgment, and I can't say it.
Sounds like requesting only winning lottery tickets.
Yeah,
That'd
okay.
be great.
So what I want to know is, are you guys all okay with this as modified?
Straw poll?
You want a straw poll? Those who feel okay with it?
As amended?
Yeah, as amended.
As amended.
Okay.
And
all right.
as long, and can I also ask if people are okay with, if we add language in support of if transportation also.
Yeah,
has
if
just
there
this
is a specific
transit.
housing related public transit request.
Like tied to like
Oh.
where our affordable housing and workforce housing plans are all getting.
That's getting a little bit messy, I think. I mean,
I don't know what it would be.
Right.
Thing. I have
That's
no
the
idea like
thing,
what
when
that-
we've had other things from different committees, it has to be very specific.
Right, so we know that they have a whole.
You know what I could do? How about this? How about I say in here? An issue discussed by the committee
Yeah.
is the importance of public
link
transit to
between
housing.
Affordable
And
housing
at
and
this
public
point, we are
transportation.
not familiar with any specific requests from the Transportation Committee. But we will be reviewing them, and should they impact housing, we'll discuss it, and we will send you a supplemental letter.
Okay, thank you.
I don't, and well, I was trying, I didn't know we were naming other things, because I was gonna say we didn't also name, emergency housing, I know, but I know that's included in VHCBs. So I just wanted, if you wanted to just emphasize that we support the human services request for emergency housing. I mean, if you're gonna do that, I don't have, we don't
I
have,
can do that.
I was trying to not say anything, but
Yeah,
then you
you're
started.
right.
What I don't
you're
wanna
right, we
do,
used to do
I
that.
don't wanna ask you guys to okay something you have,
Right.
that's completely different
So I,
than you've seen,
Yeah,
because you might disagree with.
yeah, now we're starting to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I know what I gotta do, and I'm gonna sit here and do it while all you guys get to eat lunch. All right. I
Do you
think
want
we're
any
done.
snacks?
I'm gonna get myself. I think we're